Hey, this is Joseph, John, and Jared from the MTG Thoughtcast, and you're watching one of our Fallout Commander deck reviews. If you want to watch all four of them together in one episode, you can click somewhere over here. There's going to be a card to that. But otherwise, let's get into the video.
Can I offer you lamp?
Yes, John. Offer me lamp.
Offer you lamp. It's time for the Wise Mothman and the Mutant Menace.
Let's go.
Brother, let me tell you about the Mothman.
Brother, may I have lamp? All hail
This
the
is
Moth.
so good. So this deck is the Sultai-colored one. It is blue, black, and green. The theme of this one is going to be taking advantage of one of the new keyword mechanics of this one called the radiation counters that are given to players. And then utilizes a mix of creatures that care about stuff being milled, and then mutants growing bigger off of, like, say, +1/+1 counters and things of that nature, with a mild proliferate theme in here as well. Our face commander of this deck, as joked about, is the Wise Mothman. 1 black, green, and a blue legendary insect mutant, starts as a 3/3 with flying. When the Wise Mothman enters the battlefield or attacks, each player gets a rad counter. Radiation counters state that at the beginning of your pre-combat main phase, you mill a card for every radiation counter you have. When you mill a non-land card this way, you lose 1 life and a radiation counter. So you get these counters built up, and as non-lands are milled, you lose a life, yes, but then also you lose a radiation counter. So, like, the radiation gets built up, and then it slowly dwindles itself down. You don't lose radiation counters as you mill lands, but obviously you start losing life as all of your other good stuff gets milled.
I like it. I think radiation counters are really cool.
Yeah, and this deck is looking to take advantage of obviously giving these counters to your opponent to mill them out of everything else, but it's got advantages in itself so that if you give these counters to yourself as you're milling stuff, you have things in here to take advantage of that. The Wise Mothman then has a second ability on here that whenever 1 or more non-land cards are milled from anywhere, so yourself, opponents, however, put a +1/+1 counter on each of up to X target creatures, where X is the number of non-land cards milled this way. Mill decks normally are just trying to do just the straight up mill thing of taking all of your opponent's resources and just dumping them right into the graveyard. With this kind of build, this legendary creature, and the other variety of support that comes in this deck, you are milling out both your opponent and yourself, and utilizing that mill in a aggressive means. You're not, like, your goal is not to just mill everybody out all their cards. Your goal is to mill them out in succession to a point where your support pieces are buffering up your team and you can clash in there for victory. It's very cool. It's a very different. Yeah,
it's a really
very
cool take on mill.
It is, yeah. Your alternate legendary commander that you could play out of the box from this is the Master Transcendent. 1 black, green, and a blue for a legendary artifact creature mutant. Is a 2/4. When it enters the battlefield, target player gets 2 rad counters. This, again, you can target yourself or your opponent, whichever you're looking to do. Then it does a tap ability. Put target creature card in a graveyard that was milled this turn onto the battlefield under your control. It's a green mutant with base power and toughness. It is base power and toughness 3/3. So this is a different
weird
direction.
Reanimator.
Yeah, weird Reanimator. This is the 2 mix that this deck is trying to do. Mothman is trying to use mill in a form to buffer your team, while the Master is trying to turn this mill into Reanimator, giving you like your targets to animate is the stuff that you are milling using, like the radiation counters and the other cards in this deck that mill out your opponents. Both are really, really good. This mill needs that kind of, like, reactive answers as you're doing mill.
I like this card in the way that it actually plays well with the face commander.
Like these two synergize with each other.
Yeah, they do.
In the
Unlike
other,
Mr. House.
Joseph covered, they didn't synergize at all.
Yeah. I think if we're picking between the two, I do think Mothman is kind of the stronger one out of the box. There's a reason it's the face commander, yeah. But both are very viable. Both, I think, make very, very good choices.
This seem like you could swap them and it would probably function.
Mm-hmm.
But it's clearly built around the Mothman.
Exactly.
As
yes.
it should be.
Yeah. So some good reprints that come in this deck as well. Your three really big standouts of this is going to be a Guardian Project, which has been a Commander All-Star ever since it was printed, right?
Are you playing green? You should probably play Guardian Project.
Yeah, like you don't even really need to be playing directly Blink or multiple ETB to make Guardian Project good. Guardian Project and Commander literally just says, have you put a creature into play? Fantastic, draw a card. It's very, very good. This is also a +1/+1 counters in its theme as well. So we have another printing of Branching Evolution, which is phenomenal. It has it's retained being a $10 card even from the Lost Caverns of Ixalan printing. So that's always great to see in here as well. Inexorable Tide is actually also in this deck as well. I didn't realize one like that has also crept up in cost quite a bit. When you cast a spell, Proliferate. This is going to be one of the strongest engine pieces in here to help build up your radiation counters, both either on yourself or your opponent. And the +1/+1 counters. This is what I think I like about this deck a lot, is that it's doing, you could do the Proliferate thing. Normal Proliferate decks are either proliferating as +1/+1 counters just on your board, or you're just doing Proliferate on poison counters, normally. This deck takes advantage of both. You are looking to put counters on your opponent, the player, and then you're also putting counters on your things. So this is like maximum value Proliferate.
Dude, Proliferate gets so cool with the rad counters. I initially didn't say anything about rad counters because I hate when we add mechanics to this game where it's like single little things you have to track, because this is already the most complicated game on the planet.
Jared, that was such a boomer take on the game.
I know, it's such a boomer take. It's so boomery.
Jared,
but
back in my day, we just played with our vanilla creatures and we were happy about it.
We all know how I feel about large board states and keeping track of crazy amounts of triggers. It's why I play Ramos. Haha, that's so funny. No, just kidding. But for real, I don't like a super complicated board state because I don't want to have to like think that hard when I'm trying to just play my turn. But so I tend to play lots of spell slingy stuff where it's instants and sorceries, things that happen one time and then like you have to recur them intentionally. Anyway, rad triggers. I typically don't like effects like this, but thinking about proliferating them is really cool because then things just get crazy.
It's very cool.
Yeah.
A very similar thing that I noticed in doing the research for this one, as you had just mentioned previously before, those 3 reprints, discounting all the new cards, is kind of it for the reprint value out of this deck. Seems to be a theme amongst the 3 of them, is your value is going to be coming from the new card designs. Seems to be, mostly. There are still great cards in here, not new cards as well. Warpjack Menace comes in this deck as well, another means of doubling up counters. Hardened Scales is also in here. The 3 colored talismans that are within this 3 color thing, so the Dimir one, the Simic one, and the Golgari one, they're all here as well.
I think that all of the decks have their properly colored talismans in them.
I believe they've been leaning towards making sure those are all in pre-cons.
The Kaiser deck had all 3 talismans as well, which thank God. They held out for so long on reprinting those in pre-cons. Bro.
Mm-hmm. So let's move on into some new cards that come into this deck. It's the mutants and monsters and all the big bad guys of the Fallout world. Which is a very, very big theme of the games. You know, that's where the namesake comes from. There's been a nuclear fallout across the entire world, so tons of strange and odd-looking creatures floating about. I think going through these, one of the ones that I liked that I think is going to be like the strongest, like one of the ones I think is the best, is called Alpha Deathclaw. is a 4 black and a green for a 6/6 lizard mutant. It has Menace, Trample, and when it enters the battlefield or becomes monstrous, destroy target permanent.
Whoa.
That's quite the reanimated target.
Yes, it is. And it also has Monstrosity 4 for 5 black and a green.
Whoa.
Yeah, reanimate it and then pay 7, and now you've nuked 2 permanents.
Yeah, permanents. This can hit lands.
That's brutal.
Hey, bring back land destruction.
Dude,
Yeah.
you could just...
Let's sow some salt.
Wow, that's great. That's a really good card.
That thing is nutty. Another one that I tried digging into to try to figure out without making a janky combo. How can we break Watchful Radstag? I've been looking at thing as like, man, there has got to be something that goes infinite with this. I can't find it without making like a 5-card jank pile.
Yes.
2 and a green for a 2/2 elk mutant. It has Evolve. Evolve is a trigger that says when another creature enters the battlefield, if that creature had greater power or toughness than this one, this creature gets a +1/+1 counter on it. And whenever Radstag evolves, create a token that is a copy of it.
Real quick, riffing. Does this go infinite with Cathar's Crusade?
Oh, crap. Hold on.
Creature enters, everything gets +1/+1 counters. You can stack it so it gets the counters before the evolve trigger.
Well, what would it evolve off of? Because the copy,
you're right.
the copy, you know what I mean? It's like,
is this actually not that dangerous? It is worded so dangerous.
if it was worded that it made a copy of itself when a +1/+1 counter was put on it, then it would work the way you want it to. But because it's tied to evolution, there's got to be something. But just, we've seen cards like Scoot Swarm be menaces in the format.
That's what I mean. Like this reads as a problem, but I actually think it's going to be pretty fair, and I love that.
Yeah, it's really, really cool. I want it to be busted, but I don't know, just being able to make continual clones of itself, it's very hard to get rid of, outside of a Wrath. Well, while we were on the subject of Wraths, I think one of the best ones in this deck is in one of the new cards called Nuclear Fallout. Nuclear Fallout is black, and X for a sorcery. Each creature gets twice -X until end of turn, and each player gets X rad counters.
Hell yeah.
That
is a good 2 sentences.
This card is great. I mean, it's obviously no Toxic Deluge. You still have to pay X mana into it, but twice X means that you can funnel less into this and still have a wide coverage of board spread. And negative toughness is one of those great ones to help you bypass things like Indestructible and other effects like that. This can also just straight up just be something that just gives everybody X rad counters. You know what I mean? Like the fact that you can get X of this onto, if you've built this into a deck that has made infinite mana, here's an infinite mana sink to give everybody infinite rad counters, and that will mill everybody out.
Pass turn, mill you out. Pass turn, mill you out. Pass turn, mill you out.
Exactly.
But
I like it.
Even just as a fair card, it like the fact that it wipes the board and then creates a lasting effect that carries on. So like as people are rebuilding their board states, they're just going to keep milling out every turn. So like that's a detrimental card.
You could also just kill the whole table with this, right? Because whenever you get a rad counter, you take a damage and mill a card.
Yeah.
So
you lose a life when non-land cards are milled due to the rad counters.
But probably like if you do this for X equals 40 or whatever, like you're gonna deal it's like mill 40 and then you take 1 for every non-land, which is probably 2/3 of the cards being milled.
Yeah, everyone is like almost dead.
Yeah,
that includes you though, so you have to be careful.
Yeah, it's true. Unless you have
but everyone else will be
the brutish thespian out.
Yeah,
what did you say?
Yeah, I was just about to bring that one up. This is one of the other cool legendary creatures that comes in the deck as well. Strong, the Brutish Thespian. 4 green for a 7/7 legendary mutant berserker. Has Ward 2. Enrage, when it's dealt damage, it gets yourself. You get 3 rad counters and put 3 +1/+1 counters on strong. And he says that you gain life rather than lose life from radiation.
Whoa. Okay.
So
That is, of all of the lines of text that have been placed on Magic cards, that is certainly one of them. It's ridiculous.
it's so cool. So if when your rad counters start milling you, when the non-land cards hit your graveyard, you gain the life instead of losing it.
That's dope.
That's
Kill it.
very cool.
And you could put in one of those like black, like whenever you gain life, everyone loses life and just kill everyone. Can be cool. Could be good. Anyway.
Self mill yourself out. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't need to go into much more for like new cards or whatever. Just the last one I wanted to bring up as like my notes here is just whack for Rad Storm. Just 2 simple lines of text on it. Proliferate Storm. Easy.
So good.
Whack. That's all we have to. That's all we have to leave.
I am obsessed.
That's all we have to leave that at that. But
It's literally insane.
yeah, this deck is so cool. I thought I was like super on board with this one, but just like using mill and a new interesting like direction, like the cards that you have in this really want, like, you know, self mill and milling out your opponent. None of these are brand new strategies. I get that, but the fact that this is filled with a variety of things that then rewards you for having non-land cards, either yourself or your opponent, milled out, you get to, again, kind of like our Little Caesars deck here, you're doing proactive things as your deck is doing a background strategy. You know, the overall consensus of this deck is that it's trying to be a mill deck, but then it utilizes that mill both on yourself and your opponent in very proactive strategies. You're draining everybody for 1. You're putting +1/+1 counters on your team. You're able to have targets for reanimation, that kind of stuff. It's very cool. I think it has a great synergy with itself out of the box as is.
Yeah. Also, the art and the flavor on these cards is ridiculous. I'm obsessed.
Oh yeah, these are so super cool. Yeah,
dude. I think, yeah. Go ahead, John.
Okay, yeah. I just gonna real quickly, even though I said it's got great synergies in and of itself. That's not to say there isn't room for upgrade potential out of this as well. Basically, what I've gotten in my notes here is focusing this deck in one of its 2 directions, either turning this mill into more reanimator, so using stuff like reanimate, animate dead, necromancy, things of that nature, breach the multiverse, stuff like that. Focusing this more on reanimator, or focusing this more directly on the proliferate, building up the radiation counters super high. Both of those in like general tuning it towards one of those 2 strategies, I think could help improve this be even more, even stronger than it already is. Other stuff to throw into here, Blood Chief Ascension. This deck needs a Blood Chief Ascension. It's so cool a card. Black mana enchantment. At the end of each turn, if an opponent lost 2 or more life, Blood Chief Ascension gets a quest counter. And then when it has 3 or more quest counters, if a card would go into an opponent's graveyard from anywhere, they lose 2 life and you gain 2 life.
Oh my god.
Oh yes, that is bananas. Every radiation trigger of a this will hit off the lands obviously as well, but when they hit a non-land and the radiation triggers on them, they're getting domed for 3 life every time a non-land goes to the graveyard.
Also, if you play this while there's any amount of radiation counters on anybody, it should have the 3 counters on it by the time it comes back to you. Because it's at the beginning of each opponent's upkeep. If they've lost 2 life, it gets a counter. So you play it, and then past turn, radiation triggers, they probably lose 2 life, it gets a quest counter, and then you go around the table, oh, all of a sudden my Blood Chief's Ascension is online.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous.
Mind Crank, for the exact same reason, needs to be in here as well. Mind Crank, whenever an opponent loses life, they mill that many cards. So the
doubles radiation.
Yeah, so as the radiation drains them for life when they mill a non-land card, they mill another card.
That's kind of sick.
Super.
Even for decks that want cards in their graveyard, I think that's probably too much for them to keep up with.
Exactly. And then if you focus this more on putting the radiation counters on yourself, put a Sir Conrad the Grim in here.
I was hoping you were going to say Sir Conrad.
Yeah, when you have the radiation counters going on yourself, and then these kind of things that want to die coming in and out of the graveyard, typical Sultai stuff. You'll be killed.
You know that Sir Conrad triggers off of your opponent's creatures going into graveyards too, right?
Yeah, same thing. I totally knew that.
Yeah, it's off of yourself and everybody else.
Yeah, Sir Conrad is nutty in here. Are you kidding me? That's ridiculous.
Yeah. Sir Conrad's just a great card, honestly.
Yes.
It's never bad.
They popped
Love
off.
that.
None of the other Sirs are good. It's just Sir Conrad.
Oh, I completely forgot to mention when we were talking about new cards in this deck. I don't know if necessarily this would be a cut, whatever, because I don't know how these fare. These decks include some brand new lands in them as well. I don't know if you remember talking about that. Amongst these 4 decks is a completion of a cycle of older filter lands. So this is not like the Lorwyn ones that you put a colored into and it filters out into like either some split of those 2 colors. These are lands that kind of act like what the signets do. The lands that you put a colorless in and it produces 2 of that land's colors.
For example, Overflowing Basin it's a land that you pay 1 and tap it and it adds green-blue.
Yeah, there had only ever been enemy color pair, I believe. No, allied color pairs. This is the enemy color pairs that come amongst these decks.
I like
they're
them.
Fine.
I put these in decks.
Yeah,
I'm a fan.
They're good ones. They turn your basics into a dual land. So
that's true, but then
only
unfortunately,
time they're bad is if it's the only land in your hand. In which case your hand's bad and you should mulligan it anyway. So there's very few times that these actually end up being
if you
bad.
have any other land with it, it's better.
A lot of times they
turn.
The biggest thing is like it turns your Soul Ring into like colored mana, or it turns your Thought Vessel into a colored mana source. So I actually really, really like these filtered lands, and I'm really glad that they're adding the enemy pairs to the cycle.
Yeah, I'm kind of on the other end of that, because that sort of utility is where I think the signets are useful, and that lets you have your land base be more open on the colors, right? Like
these are like signets that don't take up a card space. So like notably, the signets are not in these decks, and I actually agree with that with having the lands in there.
It's just cool. It's just cool
for folks. I'm glad that they have included them.
I mean, to not make the obvious joke, I think this deck is
it rad?
Rad. Yeah. No, this deck is really, really cool. Like I said, utilizing mill in a very proactive way. Brother Lamp, I'm here for it.